At 26, Mark graduated as Honor Man, which is a #1 ranked trainee of SEAL Buds, class number 170. Mark served for 9 years total on active duty and 11 as a reserve SEAL, retiring as commander in 2011. His leadership of teams was so effective, the government tasked him with creating a nationwide mentoring program for SEAL trainees. Not only did it increase the quality of SEAL candidates, it reduced Bud's attrition rate up to 5%. I could go on, but we're going to be talking with Mark, and he's here today to talk about his new book, Staring Down the Wolf, 7 Leadership Commitments That Forge Elite Teams. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for being here and for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex.
And you
appreciate you having me. Yeah,
so I wanted to start, your book is 7 Leadership Commitments That Forge Elite Teams. You've come across the term leadership, and you probably use the term leadership in so many different ways. How do you define leadership?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because leadership is it's like a category of different traits and behaviors and ways that people show up. And so it's easy to kind of lock on to one perspective and to think that's what leadership is. So I like taking it down to the very root and say, to me, leadership is about your ability to connect to yourself at a deep level, a deep core level, so that you can show up authentically as a whole person with your team, and together your team and you will, team and leader will unlock potential and to perform better and to be in service. So that's more of a dialogue around what I think leadership is, because I think leadership belies a fancy, quick soundbite. It's not something that really, in my world or my opinion, sits well. And I studied leadership in a doctoral program at University of San Diego, and I remember reading a book. The entire book was basically definitions of leadership, and there were hundreds, if not thousands of them, and they were all right from their perspectives, but it depends on the perspective. And so we want to get beyond, look at leadership beyond perspective. Sorry, I could go on, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too deeply just yet, but to me, and that's why I wrote the book Staring Down the Wolf, to really bring character back to the forefront of the discussion of leadership. It's hard work to be authentic. It's hard work to show up without your shadow getting in the way and dumping all over your team. And that comes in many forms: perfectionism, judgmentalism, righteousness, absolutism, or just big egos, right? Having to have all the answers. And that's not, to me, authentic, or what's going to help your team really move forward and meet the mission.
I think with leadership, unlike, some people to me think of leaders as having to be in charge and always right.
Mm-hmm.
And a certain toughness, what I thought, which may all be true,
mm-hmm.
but with the real top leaders I've met, I've been honored to meet or interact with, I find that when you are willing to be vulnerable, it opens up your team to give them permission to be vulnerable. And I think there's a bonding in that. Have you found that?
100%, and as a Navy SEAL, we don't use that term vulnerable because it, presupposes that there's a weakness that the enemy is going to exploit. And so I found with, a lot of my clients are men, because I come from that background, even though with Unbeatable Mind, our leadership development training, it really is pretty equal. But I think the idea to me is more about authenticity. Authenticity is to be aware of and fully embrace your flaws and your weaknesses, and to not hide from them. And so that's really the same thing as expressing your vulnerability. But you don't also have to worry that they're make you weak, because there's nothing about weakness. It's about awareness. We all have shadow issues. There's not a single human being on this planet that can, pretend to be beyond, some sort of emotional weakness or blockage or imperfection. And so I think we're saying the same thing, Alex. The best leaders, the best leadership is someone who shows up and said, I'm not perfect, and I know you're not perfect. And so that means none of us are perfect, but together we're going to figure this out. And wherever I have a weakness, please point it out, and I'll work on that. And if you have a weakness, I'll point that out, and you're not going to take it personally because it's for your growth and for the growth of the team so that we can, accomplish more together. So it really is a conversation. Leadership's a dialogue. It's a conversation. It's a unpacking of, what it means to be human. And that's why I think the workplace is the best opportunity for growth, whether it's virtual work or in person, right? Because we're all locked down and doing work through Zoom or through whatever, WebEx or something. It's still, regardless, the best opportunity for growth outside your own family and your immediate relationship, because that's where all these perspectives and all these different personality types and all this, what the psychology profession does call shadow, kind of expresses itself most fully. And that's the right area for growth. And so a leader is also someone who appreciates the growth opportunity that the team environment provides and is deeply committed to the growth of the team and each teammate.
I do love the word authenticity. That's a great word to use. Before we dive deeper into leadership and the seven key principles that you identify, who were some of the leaders that you've encountered in your life, personally or professionally, that have really had a big impact on you?
Well, I'll talk about two in particular, one of whom I profile in the book, and that's William McCraven, who was my boss at SEAL Team 3, and then he went on to become the admiral in charge of all special operations, the 4-star admiral. And I credit him with the guy who ended up keeping his focus, keeping the elite tier 1 team's focus on bin Laden and actually bringing that to conclusion. Let's just say that. And so what I learned from him was that that trust is really developed not by expecting trust from other people, but by proving your trustworthiness through humility, through just radical follow through on even the smallest commitments and the big ones, and through transparency, right? And so I observed his transparency, his willingness to admit he was wrong, even with a situation with me that was really painful, where, I screwed up and got fired, and he, months later, after investigating the situation and really thinking about it deeply, he came back to me and said, listen, he'd made a mistake and overreacted, and he wanted to make it right. That's really powerful. Developed a lot of trust between us, and he, had great trust from the team and eventually the whole community, which is a hallmark of, that's the second of these 7 commitments, is trust. Then there was Mr. Tadashi Nakamura. Now, you could also call him a mentor, but mentorship, coaching, these are all different aspects of leadership style. And so one of the leadership styles of Mr. Nakamura was to be a mentor and a coach. And he was my first karate instructor, where I got a black belt under his watchful eye, but he was also a Zen master. And so a small number of students, we studied Zen with him. And this was in my 20s and early 20s. And this is really what I credit just a lot of, my later success in life with his leadership and also inspiration to get me to begin at a ripe age of 20 to slow down and sit down on a little wooden bench and to begin to meditate. And now we know how valuable it is, especially for a young person with, just how fast the brain is changing. And that led to a radical shift in my perspectives, and also a radical shift in how I was meant to serve, or my understanding of how I was meant to serve, and then a realignment. And I literally left my MBA, my CPA, my Wall Street job behind and joined the SEALs at 26 after 4 years of mentorship and leadership from Mr. Nakamura. The hallmarks of his mentoring style were were unbelievable, like love. You can only describe it as that for his students. And it showed through. Like he knew all of us. He had hundreds of thousands of students, but even in our New York school, we had a couple hundred students, and he knew all of us by name. And he cared deeply for everybody, and he taught blind, and he taught disadvantaged youth, all the way up to the just badass, fighters. And he treated everyone the same, right? And he treated, the janitor the same, and he treated the front desk person. He treated his 6th degree or 7th degree black belts the same. And the other thing I noticed in him was like the complete absence of ego. Like he was this badass 10th degree black belt, but he was often, heard just giggling like a schoolgirl at the slightest joke. He was spontaneous, he was funny, and he could kick your ass, right? So it was really just profound to watch this guy. He was different than anyone I'd ever observed in his leadership style. And in fact, over the years, I've always kept him in my mind as kind of like a internal teammate as a check against my own ego, right? It's like, how would Nakamura do in this situation? Is would he have said what I just said? And I'm thinking, probably not. I got work to do. Yeah, really powerful examples, those two.
That's beautiful, actually. We'll go into the 7 leadership commitments, and then I have a bunch of other questions. But you talk about these 7 key principles to leadership: courage, trust, respect, growth, excellence, resiliency, and alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say a little bit about each of those, or collectively?
Yeah, both. These came to me. I was asked to write this book on Navy SEAL leadership by my publisher. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It's kind of been done. I've done it myself, but I said that I would do it if I could do it my way, right? I want to do something a little bit different. I wasn't exactly sure what it was. And so I just thought about it for a while, and I have a disciplined meditation practice. And a lot of times some of my best thinking happens during a meditation or after it. And this is one of the cases where after I meditated, and then at the end of it, my meditation had the intention to really uncover, what I wanted the structure for the book, what I really wanted to write. And, 15 minutes later, these 7 commitments were all on a piece of paper in the order that I ended up writing about. So it was almost like a transmission in a sense. And I recognized that these things, they're not just values, they're virtues, they're ways of being. And I call them commitments because they are something that must be committed to in order to live them, right? They're not just nice to have or something you see occasionally exhibited, but when teams and leaders deeply commit to developing the qualities of courage, trust, respect, growth, excellence, resilience, and alignment, then magic happens amongst the team. And they also tend to flow in this order if we were to look at them linearly, but we also recognize, or I also recognize, and I present this notion that there really is no linearity in our life. We are more of a holographic hologram, and so they really do kind of unfold simultaneously, but maybe in different strengths. And so said one way, it would be like courage. It takes courage to really develop the trustworthiness, to have humility, to admit your flaws and your weaknesses, like we were talking about earlier, to be vulnerable. That takes courage. But that act of courage develops great trust. And then when you turn trust into a practice where you're working on transparency, you're working on, humility, you're working on follow through, then you tend to have great respect that comes out of that relationship with those that you work with. And so courage, trust, and respect are like foundational to everything else. But another way to look at it is holographically, where the more courage you have, the more trust you have, the more trust you have, the more respect you have, the more respect you have, the more courageous you're going to be, and so on and so forth. They all mutually support each other. Those foundations of courage, trust, and respect are essential for growth to occur. Otherwise, it gets shut down. This is what I've found in my teams. If there's a lack of respect, people aren't going to put out for you, right? The team then steps down to its lowest common denominator, becomes more transactional. Just go to work, get the job done. Same thing if trust doesn't exist, and if there's not a courageous commitment by the leadership and eventually all the teammates to improve themselves every day and to work on their issues, the things that, that they've identified that are impediments to their authenticity, then the team will get shut down. So those three are foundational, and then growth occurs. But then I suggest that growth can be accelerated by looking at how you work and why, making sure you're clear about why you work, and then aligning to make sure that that work becomes your primary vehicle for growth. You're not just like doing a little bit of growth in the morning on the yoga mat, and then, you're going to work and forgetting about it and dumping all your stuff on everybody else. So growth then requires mentorship, it requires variety, and it requires challenge, right? And so this is how we promote it in our work environments. Like, we challenge ourselves to grow physically, mentally, emotionally. And we do that with a variety of coaches and mentors, and also different things that are new, so that we have to face our fears. That's how we'll grow. So but if you try to develop that type of growth environment without it being built on a foundation of courage, trust, and respect, it doesn't work. Once those four attributes or those four commitments are fully embedded in an organization or a team, then you tend to show up every day with your hair on fire, and you seek that constant improvement, which leads to excellence, because you become really curious about how to do things better, how to grow more, how to accomplish more, how to align and serve better, how to navigate volatility, and complexity and ambiguity better. And excellence is a day-by-day thing, right, of just constantly sharpening the saw. So now we've gone through 5 of the commitments. When you show up every single day, day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out, with those 5 commitments, this leads to resiliency. And resiliency is when you fall down 7 times, you get up, dust yourself off, and you're smiling because you're grateful for the obstacle. You're grateful for the challenge because you learned something new from it. And now you and the team can get busy figuring out how to do something better or different, right? Because of that obstacle. And that's resiliency. And resiliency is a hallmark of all elite teams. And then the last principle is alignment, which is not just, hey, we're all aligned because we agree with these 6 commitments. Alignment itself is a commitment. And alignment requires an unusually high degree of communication. Like, when I say high degree, I mean more frequent communication, more challenging communication. You could call that crucial conversations, and a deep commitment to improving our communications, right? So like for our organization, we have daily communication. We call them daily huddles. We are committed to practicing nonviolent communication or compassionate communication. So we have training around that. We're committing to even the Navy SEAL principle of brutal honesty, right? Where we call each other out and we work on our shortcomings, right? And these are things that take time. They're difficult for certain individuals, but that's where the growth comes in. They recognize over time that it's really the only way to grow is to have our weaknesses exposed to us, because a lot of times we can't see them ourselves. That's why we call them shadow. Others can see your shadow, but you can't see it yourself. Often.
That's interesting too.
Isn't it? Yeah. And so these then all work together like a hand in glove up this chain, but it's really a holographic kind of image where courage, trust, respect, growth, excellence, resiliency, and alignment all mutually support each other to let the light shine through more effectively.
I absolutely love that. But I'm going to ask you a question now. These do take a lot of work, and these do take a lot of practice in facing all kinds of challenges. So if we turn these on our heads, so say I'm a leader and I have real fear in a situation. Say I'm a leader and I have a staff member I don't tend to trust, or someone I don't respect. Or I'm a leader going through COVID-19, and I've been resilient in the past, but I'm ready. This is an unimaginable situation, and I don't feel as resilient. I feel fear. I feel frustration. What do you say to some of the leaders out there who are not as experienced, who are not as who are not, I guess, who are not as experienced to have developed
Mhm.
these skills, who are experiencing fear, who are experiencing the opposite of the 7
Mhm.
qualities that you identify?
That's such a great question and also very relevant. And I recognize a lot of people, well, let me say it this way. We had a saying in the SEALs that everyone wants to be a frogman on a sunny day. But the hard work is when it's miserable out. The hard work is when bullets are flying. The hard work is when you get lost on a mission. Right? And so that's when you have to face the fears of the unknown and face the fear of the danger and the extreme risk. And so we do learn these skills. And so I would like to say, well, that's easy, but it's not easy, Alex, right? It took me years and I'm still working on it. So first is everybody can stare down their fear wolf, which is why the title of the book is called Staring Down the Wolf. Everybody can, but it starts with that first commitment of courage. Sometimes we need, sometimes it takes a big crisis or a big thing to happen. For the SEALs, we engineered those so that as an operator, when the ambush came, it wasn't the first time you experienced an ambush. You've experienced it hundreds, if not thousands of times in training with real bullets, not trying to kill you, but to train you. Now, we've never been trained for a pandemic and a government shutdown that ensued from it. And so all of a sudden there's this new threat. And typically people are looking outside for the answer because they're used to having some sort of control, like the sense of control that the economy is going to kind of charge on, and I'll have time to find a new job or time to pivot my company, and there's going to be a paycheck coming in or whatever, and all of a sudden it's all gone. And so that kind of relates back to what I was saying. In the SEAL teams, we learned that we can't control any of that stuff. You can't control the enemy. You can't control what kind of weapons they're going to have. You may not control the high ground. You may not control the weather. You definitely won't control the weather. You may not control whether your own equipment works. You may not control whether your team is going to survive or not. But what you can control, right, is your mindset. And you can control your emotions. And you can control where you put your focus or your attention. You can control your stress, right? Anything that happens on the inside of our skin is under our control. Anything that happens on the outside of our skin is absolutely out of our control. So that's one of the fundamental teachings of BUDS or SEAL training is master what you can control and don't worry about the rest, but use some cool strategies for being able to navigate that uncertainty quickly. So back to the 7 commitments. Courage is the commitment to rely upon when a new crisis faces you, because that's going to be the one that allows you to, to stare down whatever dragon is now facing you. And because anything new, no matter how much work you do, I don't care if you're CEO of a freaking Fortune 500 company, new shit is scary and it's going to expose opportunities for growth, right? Opportunities for growth. Said another way, it's going to expose things that scare the shit out of you. And like you said, it's going to breach your confidence because your confidence was built upon an old reality or an old paradigm and some semblance of control over that. And now it's gone. So it's time to retool the entire mindset to say, you know what, I never had any control over any of that to begin with. And so I was just riding it out through kind of a particular period of history, and now it's shifted. Great. That's awesome. Such opportunity, so much learning to occur. And yes, just like with any challenge, there's going to be a little bit of pain associated with developing the new mindset and the new skills and the competencies. But pain is weakness leaving your body. That was, what we felt in the SEAL teams. Like pain is necessary for growth. And I don't mean like physical pain. I mean like the pain of going through the unknown, the pain of, seeing everyone else suffering and being there for them as a leader, right? To really take that on and to be with it. Don't deny it, right? Don't push it away. Don't pretend it's not there. But know that on the other side of that pain and suffering is more light, right? Is the light. And that's the the light of new insights, the light of new opportunities, the light of you being stronger and more, organized internally for the challenging world that we actually have always lived in. It's just, gave the false perception of being a little bit more in control. So it's all about mindset. And I think the next frontier of leadership development is all about mindset, attitude, emotional awareness. And in order to do that, you got to stare down those fears that are holding you back. And I contextualize those broadly as biases, as negative reactionary conditioning. What is it that you fear that is being masked over that allows or causes you to show up as righteous, or causes you to show up as a perfectionist, or causes you to show up fearful even of having a critical conversation? These were things that I had. What made me a codependent? So I would say yes to too many things and too many people. What was that underlying fear and that bias or that shadow? I had to stare that down, because until I did, I kept attracting the same challenges into my life and the same, people who were basically narcissists who were going to use me the next time around. And I just kept allowing it to happen until I realized that, wow, that is all me. I'm causing the conditions for that to happen. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone listening cause the conditions for COVID-19 to happen, but from here on out, we will cause the conditions for our reaction. So we're either going to react negatively and cower in fear, or we're going to react courageously and come through it with an attitude that there is opportunity here. We'll find a way or make a way to the other side. On the other side of this will be a better business / job / more deeper connection with my family, my team, better opportunities, and a more beautiful world even. Because gosh, look at how, like, we've been just stunningly given an example of how much we've been polluting this planet by calling an all stop and just seeing fresh air in LA and, and fresh water in Venice. And there's just hundreds of examples of this all around, just how beautiful it is if we could just give the Mother Earth a break. And so there's so much to be grateful for. There's so much opportunity, and it's just to train yourself to see the opportunity, navigate through it with courage. And so to summarize, when the real challenges come, all the other commitments still apply, but you're going to amplify courage, right? And then once your team starts to feel more courageous, then you amplify alignment, because the alignment is where, like, we got to align around our new future, this new reality. Are we just like getting through this and waiting to go back to the old, or are we looking for new opportunities and figuring out how we can come out of this stronger so that we don't click back into the old negative reactionary patterns, and whether that's for us as individuals or a company or even as society at large?
So first of all, I want to repeat one thing you said that I think in the next book of quotes someone writes. I love what you said. Pain is weakness leaving your body. I've never heard it put that way, and I think that's just an amazing takeaway quote to think about, to envision. Second of all, so what you're saying is, if we could shift the perspective and see this as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity to maybe reinvent new ways that are better ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shifting our own perspective is vital and an important first step. As a leader, how do you then get the people under you to shift their perspective? The naysayers who say, that'll never work, or, this is an impossible situation. So once you've changed your mindset, how do leaders help others to not only not bring themselves down as leaders, to keep firm in your own newly shifted mindset, but how do you inspire others to see the vision that you now adopt?
Yeah, definitely a great question. And again, it's one of those things that is simple to think about it, but it's not easy to do. One thing, though, you said, I think, is the first shift for the leader is there's nobody under the leader, right? Maybe on an organizational chart, it could be depicted that way. And maybe in the old industrial age bureaucratic organizations, you feel like you're under someone, or a leader feels like they're over someone. That attitude itself has got to go. It's got to go. We are in this together. There are, there are positional roles that maybe a bureaucratic organization needs to hold together because of the way it was organized. And I'll use the SEAL teams or the military as an example. It's a what we'll call a second plateau bureaucratic organization that has a rigid structure for a reason. Although I think in the future, other structures could make a lot of sense. And we see that with what happened with ISAF in Afghanistan with General Stanley McChrystal. We completely shattered that paradigm and created a very flat team of teams organizational structure, which is what we recommend. So there's nobody under you. It's just we're getting to this. We're going to figure this out together. We are going to solve this together. I can share my vision, and I want everyone else to share their vision. And guess out of that sharing and out of that communicating, this is why I said this is the process of alignment. So we jump from courageously looking at how we're going to get through this. And oh, by the way, Alex, here's the dirty truth of this. If you have team members who aren't willing to commit to these 7 commitments, who aren't willing to courageously look at their own growth, then this is another problem with industrial age bureaucracies. Then the team cannot unlock its potential at the level I'm talking about, because it takes everybody to be committed, because one bad apple will spoil the bunch. And so fortunately, like in my environments in the SEAL teams, we were able to move people off the team who weren't committed to really aligning around these principles. And we moved many people out of the SEAL teams who just didn't belong for that reason. But then they were still in the Navy, unless they really screwed up. This is harder for a bureaucratic organization, but if you're an entrepreneur or a nimble kind of more of a integral commons type organization, then it's absolutely necessary. And I think organizations in the future, it's absolutely necessary that everybody is on the team for the right reasons. They're committed to a similar vision and mission, and they're all growth mindseted people. They're willing to work on themselves. They don't have to be experts in all these, these commitments. They just have to be willing to work on it. So that's really important. But you can't force someone to do that. If you're a leader, you can have the conversation, you can model it, you can mentor it, you can demonstrate it by how you're showing up differently every day because your commitment to these 7 commitments. But you can't force feed some of this. You can't volunteer someone to have courage or to be respectful or trustworthy. It just comes from the depth of their character. But what I've noticed is that it does rub off when people, like in the SEAL teams or some of the, like the current organization, when most people are committed and maybe 1 or 2 are new to the organization and they understand it intellectually because they heard the brief in the interview process, they just start to observe the behavior. And then you have the culture that reinforces the 7 commitments. Then you have your systems that are aligned to support and to encourage. I'm not saying punish, but to encourage, right? Adherence to the commitments. For instance, so if you say the culture is deeply committed to growth, but then you don't provide time for growth opportunities or challenging experiences or variety or mentors or coaches, and you don't offer any resources for that, then it's just a flat idea, right? But when the organization says, yeah, we're committed to growth, and guess what? We're going to work out together 3 times a week, and we have a therapist who's ready at call, or an emotional coach, and we have a nutritionist who can help anyone out individually, and we're going to do a challenging mental emotional team building exercise once a month, and insert whatever down the list. Now you've got the culture working for you, you got the team working for you, and the individuals are going to start to experience that growth, and they're going to see it modeled. So you can't change someone. At the same time, it's not your job to change someone. It's just to set up the conditions for transformation to happen. And you're all in this together. The acronym TEAM is together, everyone achieves more. It's not like together, everyone learns more from the leader. The leader doesn't have all the answers. The leader isn't there to dictate growth or to tell the team what the vision is. The leader's there to help everyone unlock the vision themselves and the new opportunities, to see new opportunities and to share their experiences and to communicate their fears so that everyone, people grow. And I think, one thing that's popping in my head right now is a lot of people just have this, they just don't really know what growth looks like. And growth is like, you can't really point to it like you can with what kind of growth that we're talking about here, Alex, is like the emotional awareness and maybe even like moral competency, communication strength, connection, heartfelt connection. We use the term kokoro in our SEALFIT training, merging your heart and your mind into your actions. That's the type of growth. And it really is only displayed to your character. Like, you can't point to your bank account. You can't point to, other measures of success, because they may not necessarily line up right away, or your physical structure, right? You can see a lot of change when you start doing weightlifting, for instance. But when you do this type of growth, it's subtle. It's hard for even you to track it because you're inside the bottle. You can't read the label, but it's very evident to those around you who are in the closest relationship with you, because you could just literally have one facial expression they've never seen before, which is softer. Or for once, you don't come into the room dumping your shit all over them. Or for once, you're not the person with the last say, or thinking that your idea is the best idea. And you just sit there and say, and then they look back and they say, what's changed? And so it's the language we use, how we show up with our team. And that removes the obstacles, right? Because I've often said, especially since writing this book, that the leader tends to be the biggest obstacle to the team's success, because so much expectation is placed on the leader, and that leads to this expectation hangover amongst the team when the leader's not perfect. So then the leader tries to be perfect. They put the mask of perfection on, but that doesn't work very well, does it? I don't know if I answered your question. I went off on
that's
big rabbit hole.
Perfect. How does this relate to parenting and families?
I think it's really relatable, because consider this is maybe more of a spiritual construct, but everybody first leads themselves. It's almost like there's two of us, right? I don't mean split personality, but there's the ego structures, yourself, your identity, and then there's the primordial witnessing aspect of yourself, which is the spiritual traditions will call different things, but they're aspects of your being. And in our training, we teach people through meditative practices to connect to the witnessing aspect, and then to be able to look through your eyes from that perspective, which helps clarify your ego structures, your sense of self, your identity, so that you make better decisions. You become more inclusive, more compassionate. Your perspective shifts. So if we can recognize that leadership first starts with leading our ego, leading our identity, creating a more powerful story about who we are, why we're on this planet, and what we're going to do about it, and how we're going to serve. And also the story around that takes a little bit of work, right? This is like a developmental path. Unbeatable Mind, our program, is a developmental path. And that developmental path, the whole idea is unique to Westerners, but it's very, very, grounded in Eastern philosophies. And I've been a lifelong martial artist and a yoga teacher. We even developed our own yoga program, which is an integration of martial arts, functional fitness, and traditional asana. And so I'm very comfortable with the development path. Even the Navy SEALs was a developmental path, but it's something that most people don't have much really anchor in. So first, we lead ourselves. We lead ourselves to higher ground, to evolve our awareness and our consciousness, so that we can then show up more authentically with more vulnerability. We'll borrow from Brene Brown, and to be more present with our family. Wow. And so the more I practiced this, like with my son, the deeper our relationship became. And I stopped trying to project my needs onto him. And I just started to really appreciate him for who he was, and just am completely present, even with all my warts, right? And I've never hidden those from him. And he loves that about me. He totally appreciates that he's got this badass Navy SEAL father who's an author, and he brags about me with his kids. But at the same time, he's seen me screw up so many times and laugh about it. And he's seen through my example that that's okay. That's just part of being human. So parenting, leading a family or leading a spouse, and that's a two-way street. First means you lead yourself, and you don't lie to yourself. You don't, have a false veneer. You develop humility because you recognize that, just humanity is about evolution, and we evolve more quickly when we are in relationship, because it's hard. It's hard work. Parenting is hard work, right? Being in a relationship with a significant other is hard work. And that's where leadership starts, I think. And a lot of people ignore that, and they think leadership is what you do out there. But then they come home and they recognize sometimes when they wake up that no, leadership starts right at home. Otherwise, you get these split personalities, It's like this lack. That's what integrity is. This lack of integrity is when you're trying to be one person over here with one group of people, but then you're a different person at home with, your intimate families. And this is why so many, like I have a lot of peers who are great SEALs, but horrible family leaders. And as a result of that, because they didn't really understand that and didn't work on it, they end up spending most of their time away from their family. And the structure supports that, because you're gone for 11 months out of the year. And I just had a friend the other day I connected with, I hadn't seen in a while, and he had a beautiful relationship, and they got divorced 2 years ago because he just couldn't give up the addiction to always being gone, right? Always being out in the field, having a bigger purpose in the sense of I'm a Navy SEAL, I got to go, get the next bad guy. And yes, that's very important, but it would have been far nicer for me to see that he was able to balance that with also being able to be present and there with his family. And it just didn't work out. And I'm not going to judge him for it. I just was kind of sad to see that, because, it was a beautiful thing that they had. And my wife and I were both really stunned. But I get it, right? It's hard work, and it's hard to do everything well. We're not asking for perfection, just perfect effort here, right?
What are you most proud of about yourself and all that you've done?
I don't like the word pride, right? One of my mentors, on the level of consciousness, pride has still got a negative quality to it.
What have you done that has surprised yourself, maybe?
I like that. That's a really good question. Thank you. So I guess what has surprised me is how, when I finally aligned with my life purpose, which was first to be a warrior and then a warrior leader and now a teacher of like the warrior leadership principles. It's gone way beyond that. But when I aligned with that, like, it became so incredibly clear to me that the path I was on, which was I was a CPA and I'm finishing my MBA at New York University, a top business school. And I have a legacy family business that was just waiting for me to go back and take over. None of that was appealing to me as soon as I understood my calling or my purpose, and I aligned with that. And then anytime that I fell off that path and I went down a road that wasn't in alignment with that, I've been slapped down. Right? I've had huge businesses ripped out from under me, lost millions of dollars, all because I just was doing it for the wrong reason. It wasn't in alignment. And then when I finally said, okay, screw that, never again am I going to go down that road. Never again am I going to do a business deal just for money, or go into business with people that aren't committed to these 7 commitments that we talked about. Once I finally made that, if it's not a hell yes, it's a definite no kind of commitment to myself, that I was only going to do things in alignment with my vision, mission / calling, that how much easier everything got for me. Like, it's just almost effortless. And I love that. It's like the idea of mastery that the Japanese warriors have, called shibumi. And shibumi means effortless perfection. And it's exactly what I observed with Nakamura, the mentor I was referring to earlier, who was a Zen master. Effortless perfection in his teaching style, in his spontaneity, even in his projection of power, or force, I should say, or which power is more positive than force. And so I'm starting to see elements of that in myself, in my life, where it's becoming almost effortless. There's a lot more spontaneity. And so this is a good sign, And it's surprising, you know, because I used to think that it was hard. And there's certainly days where I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I got 4 podcasts today and I got to do 3 videos and this and that. And I'm like, this is going to be an intense day, but it's always fun, right? It's always fun. So I guess that's kind of the answer there, is when you align with your true calling, then everything becomes fun and spontaneous. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have pain and suffering. That exists, but you don't identify with it, and you just kind of let it roll through like a wave passing by. And then you recognize that on the other side of that is even more joy and more insight, because you endured it, because you're resilient.
You know when you're on the right path in life.
You do. Yeah. You feel it.
And it just
deeply. Right. And that's what, like, flow in the context of career trajectory or fulfilling your purpose is, that where everything seems easy, you just feel on, you have a great peace of mind, you feel grounded. And if you don't feel those things, those are the signs. Those your spirit telling you, you know what, you're on the wrong path. You're doing this for the wrong reasons. And where it gets confusing for people is when you're like halfway there, right? And so maybe the other half is like this unbelievable financial opportunity, and you're sort of in the field that you like, but you meet all this resistance and you're not 100% aligned. So we want to keep moving toward 100% alignment. This is hard work.
That's major courage right there, is following your calling, following your heart, you know, saying no to these things that society says, well, these are the things you should pay attention to, and following your heart.
Absolutely.
So what do you hope people take away from your book?
I hope that they're inspired to really commit to growth, commit to mastering themselves in service to others, right? Not so that they can become more wealthy or, right, grow the biggest business in the universe. Master themselves in service to others, recognizing that that has to happen with a team. And that if you're the leader, or even if you're not the leader, but you're on a team, you can help that team grow as well. And when the team grows, everybody grows. I think that the team is the next leader, right? In our world, things are too complex for any individual to even presume to have answers. And so the epicenter of leadership is the team unlocking its leadership potential, and then operating, as McChrystal said, a team of teams with other teams, even outside your organizations. And you're seeing this happen in certain ways in the business world in their response to the COVID-19. I think that this book is timely in that it helps leaders understand that the next domain of leadership training and development is really found on the inside. It's developing the ability to concentrate and to, you know, blast through uncertainty by being laser focused. It's the ability to be more mindfully aware and to expand our awareness so we can take in more information, so we can see the opportunities quicker and avoid the threats. It's to become more intuitive and spontaneous, where the decisions we make may not make rational sense right away, but when you look back on them, you're like, holy cow, thank God we did that, right? And these can be developed. And I offer some ideas in the book, and it's it is the essential purpose of our Unbeatable Mind training, is to develop those skills so that the next generation of leaders, whether they're leaders on a battlefield or a corporate boardroom, or, you know, in the sales team, or even a nonprofit, are able to control what they can control, which is what's on the inside, and let everything else go and just navigate it with a smile on their face. That's what I hope people get out of the book.
That's wonderful. Mark, could you hold up the book one more time so people know what to look for? It's available wherever books are sold. Staring Down the Wolf.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for being here. You're certainly amazing, so inspirational.
Well,
and I
thank
thank you for everything. This was a really wonderful experience. I appreciate it.
That's really nice. Thank you for having me on, and appreciate you for
Thank
doing what you're doing.
I wish you all the best.
You too. We used to say hoo-yah in the SEAL, so I'll give you a hoo-yah. It means like, our heart's with you too.
Thank you.